Good morning. My name's Kelly Dougherty, and I've had the privilege and the honor of being the director here at Love Chapel for about the last 18 months. It's been quite the interesting 18 months, and it's been a fun time. It's actually been one of the best times of my life, and it's been a true blessing. And I just want to talk to you today a little bit about what Love Chapel is. And it's so interesting that people have this feeling that Love Chapel is this separate entity. Love Chapel is nothing more than an outreach extension of your church. And that's what is really kind of neat about the whole thing. And I always like to stress that more than anything, because it's not like you're giving to some other organization. You're actually giving to a part of your church and your mission in Columbus. So it is pretty neat to be able to come to you today and talk to you a little bit about what Love Chapel's about. I always like to start with a little bit of background on myself. I've not always had the pleasure of being in the food pantry or financial assistance area. My career actually was in nursing homes. I was a nursing home administrator, and then for about 15 years was a regional director of operations, where I oversaw several nursing homes. Kind of interesting, because I never thought I would end up in this position, but throughout my career I learned things, and I could see where God was preparing me all along for the position that I have now. So I grew up here in Columbus, Indiana. My dad still lives here in town, and my sister lives in Bloomington. I lived here until I was 21, and then I moved away, because with nursing homes you travel a lot, but then finally had the chance to come back to Columbus about 20 years ago, and have been a resident here in Columbus since then. Most important thing I can tell you about myself is that I love the Lord, and He's my Savior. I was baptized when I was 8 years old at Memorial Baptist Church, and I went to school here in town, went to Richards Elementary, went to Central Middle School, and Columbus East High School. So that's a little bit about who I am, but more importantly I want to tell you a little bit about what Love Chapel is. And it's pretty neat. Love Chapel is most known, when people talk about Love Chapel, they talk about the Food Pantry, which is where we're coming to you today from. And the Food Pantry actually started out in the basement of the small chapel building that we have, and it was actually an afterthought. Love Chapel was actually formed as a mission to be able to do school shots. It was formed as a mission to be able to provide physicals and do those types of things for kids, and they had a wellness clinic. And medicine has changed quite a bit, and eventually that kind of went by the wayside. But one of the things they started doing was giving out a small bag of food to the families that came into the wellness clinic. And that really took off, and then became the Food Pantry. It's hard to believe that here we are 50 some years later, and last year, to give you an example of the number of people we saw about 1,200 families a month, and that works out to almost 5,000 people a month, 4,800 people a month. And those folks come to the pantry once a month. They're able to come, and they do what we call our full pantry visit, and with that they get about $150 to $175 worth of groceries. One of the things that I find most interesting is we keep pretty good statistics, and I'm a numbers person, and I know not everybody is that way. But last year, Love Chapel gave out 1.255 million pounds of food to the community, to those that were in need. And when you think about that, that's a staggering amount of food. On average, we give out about 4,000 pounds of food a day. So in addition to the pantry that we have here, we do weekly bread and produce visits, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I talk about our COVID-19 things that we're doing. But families can come back and get bread and produce once a week in between their monthly visits. In addition to that, we do mobile pantries, which we host usually in rural areas. The next one will be in July at New Hope Christian Church, just off 31. But we do a monthly pantry 8 months out of the year, and that's in addition to the regular visits, and we average about 150 families that come to each of those to get food. In addition to that, as far as the food offerings that we do coordinate and organize the hot meal program that goes on. Columbus is a very unique community in that we can get a hot meal if you need it here in Columbus 7 nights a week, 364 days a year. The only day we don't do it is on Christmas Day. And I think there's some other Christmas offerings on that day that are available. But Love Chapel recruits groups, and I know Asbury at one point was a hot meal host on Tuesday nights. Actually, it's at my church, which is Memorial Baptist now, on Tuesday nights, and we host that there. But we get groups to come in, and we feed anywhere from 50 to sometimes it can be up to 100 families now, or 100 individuals, I should say, to be correct. So it's a really neat thing. And so when you look at the whole, one of the biggest things that Love Chapel does is our food operations. In addition to that, most commonly thought about then also is our financial assistance office. The original 311 Center Street building, which is the old chapel, is where we do our financial program out of. Larry Rowe, who's the pastor at Second Baptist Church, happens to be our financial outreach coordinator. And we work with folks that get behind on rent or utilities, and sometimes we'll even do deposits to help them get into a place to live. It really is an interesting process that he goes through, and Larry's quite adept at it. In addition to the financial assistance that we provide, Larry does a lot of coaching and counseling, which to me is just as important as anything else. He talks with them about their budget skills, about where they're at with things in life, and then he tries to help meet their needs in a kind and compassionate Christian manner. And so it's a neat program. Last year we gave out about $220,000 in financial assistance, and we averaged about 87 folks a month that we were able to give out financial assistance to. More than anything though is we give hope and help to those that are in need, and I think that's the most important part of it. Our most recent big addition has been Brighter Days Housing, and we do a shelter for the homeless, and at one point last year we were running pretty full. The building was originally built to be 36 beds that would serve 20 men and, 34 beds, 20 men and 14 women. We've been able to expand it to be able to do 30 men and 16 women to take us to 46. And we now have an overflow room when we're able to open it back up that will allow us to go to 50. So we'll be able to house 50 individuals. And there were times late last year that we were averaging, well, in November, we averaged 41 people a night. So it's being utilized, and it's certainly an important service in town. Basically, it's a night shelter only. Folks can come in anytime between 6 and 9 in the evening. We have snacks that are available for them. They have a place to shower, they get a bedroll, a nice clean place to sleep that's warm and comfortable in the winter and cool and comfortable in the summertime. And in addition, they get breakfast the next morning and a sack lunch when they leave. But to me, the most important thing that we do is we have case managers on duty each evening, and they work with those clients to try and develop a plan to get them back to self-sufficiency. And to me, that's the most important part of it, because it's not just putting a roof over their head and some food in their stomachs, but it's about trying to get them back on their own. Because let's face it, most people, that's what they really want. And a lot of times it's just been bad breaks that have happened to them, or poor life choices that have come back to haunt them. And so that is what we try to do with Brighter Days. Naturally, with the COVID-19, things have changed quite a bit. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about how life has changed over the last few months. And then I've got a closing story that I'll talk to you about. Basically, we have remained open here at the Food Pantry during this entire pandemic. One of the things that has been most interesting is that we have seen a large portion of the community that have come to us, and we've heard statements like, "I haven't eaten in 2 days. We have no food at home, and we don't know what we're going to do." And oftentimes those are the folks that we serve that don't have the safety net. Particularly the biggest group is by far the Latino community. They're not eligible for the unemployment benefits. They did not get stimulus checks, and their jobs dried up because they were in restaurants, hotels, and places like that, factories, and those places were some of the first to lay off. So we've seen a tremendous need both financially, but also for food for those individuals. So one of the things that we've implemented is what we call a CARES package. And at least through the end of June and probably through the end of July, anybody can come back once a week and get that care package. And in that care package, we do, it's like 6 cans of vegetables, rice, beans, milk, bread, peanut butter, canned meats, and enough stuff to sustain a family during their time. And we tailor it. We've got a care package for a family of 3 or less. We've got a care package for a family of 4 or more. In addition, the Sunrise Rotary Club has been kind enough to provide frozen meals to go with that. So people don't have to go hungry in our community. And we've had about 50 to 60 individuals that come back each week for that care package, and so, or 50 or 60 families. So we're making a difference during this COVID-19. The other big change that we've had in the food pantry is that we actually have done a curbside service. Normally our folks where we're at today would come through and shop, but in order to limit the physical distancing, we basically set the registration table up right at the front door. They come up and register right at the front door. We ask them a series of questions so we can find out their wants and needs, if they need pet food in addition to their regular food, household supplies they might need, and then we fill that internally with our volunteers and staff, and then we take it out to curbside to them. So it makes it very safe and very effective, and it's allowed our volunteers to continue to feel safe while they work, but still meet the needs of our clients. And so that's been a big part of it. The one area that was most affected was the Brighter Days shelter, and we honestly were trying to keep the shelter open. So March 23rd, we did close Brighter Days down. We continue to staff it in the evenings, providing camping supplies, nutrition, and resources. But the neat thing was that at that time, we were able to place 12 people permanently into their own homes. And so that's kind of led to a big change. We reopened on Monday, June 15th. Brighter Days is back open at 50% capacity. We have a full staff, and we're excited to say that we've changed our focus because of the lesson we learned when we had to close it, is that people now have 60 days to be able to find a place. We never had a time limit before, and we had quite a few people that just really were utilizing the shelter to be free rent. And so what we're going to do is we're really upping our case management to be able to try and help these folks to get to self-sufficiency within a 60-day period. So that's been what we've done with COVID-19. Before I close, I always like to tell the story, and hopefully you haven't heard this. It's not my story, but our Sunday school class did a study, and it was by Richard Stearns. And he told a story of how he was in a tropical area, and a storm came up one night. And he said the winds were up, the surf was up, the storm surge was up, and it was just a really violent and harsh storm. And the next morning when he got up, the sun was out, it was a beautiful morning, and he went down to the beach to see the damage that had happened and what happened. And when he got down to the beach, he was just overwhelmed because the storm surge and the tide had brought in all of these starfish, and the shore was littered with thousands upon thousands of starfish just laying there, and these starfish were dying. And he was just so overwhelmed, he didn't know what to do. He just sat down, he buried his head in his hands, and he just started to cry. A couple of minutes later, he looked down the beach, and there was a gentleman, and the man would reach down and he would throw a starfish in to the ocean. He'd walk a few feet further, he'd throw another one in. Well, by the time he got to where Richard was, Richard says, "I don't understand what you're doing." He goes, it's too big of a problem. There is nothing you can do. You cannot make a difference. And the man looked at him quietly, reached down and picked up a starfish and threw it back in the ocean. And he says, "You know what? For that one, we made a difference." And that's what I look at. The task of being able to feed individuals, provide care for them, it can be overwhelming and daunting. But each and every day, we make a difference in someone's life. And that's what Love Chapel is all about. We make a difference in people's lives. And I want to thank you guys for your support and for your help in this mission. And we would love to have you volunteer at some point in the time. We have plenty of opportunities, and continue to keep us in your prayers. Thank you so much.